Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's Word Study, where we continue in our study on the book of Bereshith, Genesis. But today we begin our study of Yaakov. That's Jacob. And today's video is part 1 of 4. Today we're going through chapter 27, verse 41, through chapter 30. But before we begin, let's pitch this tent with Elohim. Let's bow our hearts. Dear beloved Abba, Father, we come before you this day, Abba, to worship you, to praise you, and to thank you, Father, for the message you have for us today in your word. Oh, Abba, thank you for opening our eyes, our ears, and our hearts, that we may see, hear, and understand the greater depths and mysteries that you have packed away in your word. As we give this day, Abba, to you, Yeshua, Ruach HaKodesh, as we do every day, praying in Yeshua's Kodesh name, Yahweh, Yahweh, our Elohim, Yahweh Echad. Amen. So, Esau hated Yaakov because of the berachah with which his Abba baruched him. And Esau said in his heart, "The days of mourning for my Abba are very near. Then I will kill my brother Yaakov." And when these words of her elder son Esau were repeated to Rivkah, she sent for Yaakov, her younger son, and said to him, "Listen carefully. Your brother Esau is comforting himself concerning you by planning to kill you. So now, my son, listen and do what I say. Go, escape to my brother Lavan in Haran. Stay with him for a while until your brother's anger subsides. When your brother's anger towards you subsides, and he forgets what you did to him, then I'll send and bring you back from there. Why should I be deprived of you both in a single day?" Note, Rivkah never saw her son Yaakov again. He was well over 40 and probably 57 years old when he fled from Esau to Haran, and he stayed there at least 20 years. Continuing, then Rivkah said to Yitzchak, "I am disgusted with living because of these Hittite women, these insolent wives of Esau. If Yaakov takes a wife from among the women of this land, from Hittite women like these, my life will not be worth living." Note, as noted back in chapter 26, the Hittites, the sons and daughters of Heth, were all tainted with the bloodlines of the Nephilim. Continuing, so Yitzchak called Yaakov and baruched him and charged him and said to him, "You will not marry one of the women of Canaan. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's Abba, and take from there as a wife for yourself one of the daughters of Lavan, your mother's brother." Note, Yitzchak said, "Arise, go to Padan Aram." As previously pointed out, the Hebrew verb stand or arise is often used as an instruction to prepare to fulfill a command. And here we see Yitzchak giving Yaakov a command to go to the house of his mother's father and take a wife from one of his uncle Lavan's daughters. Continuing, May El Shaddai barach you and make you fruitful and multiply you so that you may become a great company of peoples. And may he also give the Bereshith of Abraham to you and your descendants with you, that you may inherit the promised land of your sojournings, which he gave to Abraham. And then Yitzchak sent Yaakov away, and he went to Padan Aram, to Lavan, son of Bethuel the Aramean, the brother of Rivkah, the mother of Yaakov and Esau. And Esau noticed that Yitzchak had baruch Yaakov, and sent him to Padan Aram to take a wife for himself from there, and that, as he baruch him, he gave him a prohibition, saying, You will not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. And that Yaakov obeyed his Abba and his Immi, and had gone to Padan Aram. And Esau realized that his two wives, the daughters of Canaan, displeased Yitzchak, his Abba, and to appease his parents, Esau went to the family of Yishmael and took as his wife, in addition to the wives he already had, Mahalath, the daughter of Yishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Neviot, Yishmael's firstborn son. So Yaakov left Be'er Shiva, never to see his mother again, and traveled toward Haran. And he came to a certain place and stayed overnight there, because the sun had set. And taking one of the stones that was there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. And he dreamed that there was a ladder, or a stairway, placed on the earth, and the top of it reached out of sight toward the Shamayim. And he saw the Malachim of Elohim ascending and descending on it, going to and from the Shamayim. Note, considering Yaakov's dream, it's interesting to note Yochanan, John, chapter 1, verse 51, where Yeshua says, Amen, Amen. You will see the Shamayim opened and the Malachim of Elohim ascending and descending on the bane of Adam. Continuing. And behold, Yahuwah stood above and around him and said, I am Yahuwah Elohim of Avraham, your Jiddu, that is your grandfather, and the Elohim of Yitzchak. I will give to you and to your descendants the land of promise on which you are lying. Your descendants will be as countless as the dust of the earth, and you will spread abroad to the west and the east and the north and the south, and all the mishpacha, that is all the families, all the clans, all the tribes, all the nations of the earth will be baruch through you and your descendants. Note, through Yaakov, all the nations of the earth have been and are continually being baruch by all the descendants, that is, believers everywhere, but most expressly by Yeshua HaMashiach, the descendant of Yaakov. Back to our story. Yahweh continues speaking to Yaakov, saying, Behold, I am with you and will keep careful watch over you. I will guard you wherever you may go, and I will bring you back to this promised land, for I will not leave you until I have given the fullness of all that I have promised you. And then Yaakov awoke from his sleep, and he said, "Without any doubt, Yahweh is in this place, and I did not realize it." And he stood in profound reverence and with great esteem for Yahweh, and said, "How astonishing and how awesome is this place! This is none other than the Beit of Elohim, and this is the Sha'ar of the Shamayim." That is to say, this is the entrance gate of the Shamayim. And then Yaakov got up early in the morning and took the stone he had put under his head and set it up as a matzevah. That is, he set it up as a personal memorial and monument to the vision he had in his dream, a matzevah. And he poured olive oil on the top of it to make it kodesh, declaring it as dedicated to and for Elohim's purpose. And he named that place Beit El, Bethel, meaning house of Elohim. And the previous name of that city was Luz, meaning almond tree. And Yaakov made a vow, saying, "If Elohim will be with me," in the Aramaic Targum it reads, "if the Memra of Yahweh will be with me," if Elohim will be with me and keep me on this journey that I take, and will give me food to eat and clothing to wear, and if he grants that I return to my Abba's house in safety, then Yahweh will be my Elohim. This stone which I have set up as a monument will be Elohim's Beit, his house, a Kodesh place to me, and of everything that you give me, I will give the 10th to you as an offering of gratitude, proclaiming my confidence in you, Elohim. Note, don't ever be too quick to make a vow, Chavarim. Whenever we become aware of Elohim pitching tents with us, as he does here with Yaakov, we want to be very sure that we are not responding with legalism, thinking that our actions or our reactions carry some sort of weight, or that we can help him perform his will for us in our lives in any way. Abba, Yahweh's will be done, not ours. Continuing. Then Yaakov went on his way and came to the land of the people of the Kedem, that is, the people of the ancient paths, near Haran. And as he looked, he saw a well in the field, and 3 flocks of sheep lying there, resting beside it, because the flocks were watered from that well. And the stone on the mouth of the well that covered and protected it was large. And when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well, water the sheep, and afterward replace the stone on the mouth of the well. And Yaakov said to them, "My brothers, where are you from?" And they said, "We are from Haran." And he said to them, "Do you know Lavan, the grandson of Nahor, Abraham's brother?" And they replied, "We know him." And he asked them, "Is he shalom?" That is he complete and well? And they said, "He is shalom. Look, here comes his daughter, Rachel, with the sheep." And Yaakov said, "Look, the sun is still high. It's a long time before the flocks need to be gathered in their folds for the night. water the sheep, and go, return them to their pasture." But they said, "We cannot leave until all the flocks are gathered together, and the shepherds roll the stone from the mouth of the well. Then we will water the sheep." And while he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her Abba's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. And when Yaakov saw Rachel, the daughter of Lavan, his mother's brother, and Lavan's sheep, he came up and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered the flock of Lavan, his uncle. And then, as Yaakov gave Rachel a kiss of greeting, he raised his voice and wept aloud. And Yaakov told Rachel he was her Abba's relative, Rivka's son, and she ran and told her Abba. So, when Lavan heard of the arrival of Yaakov, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his beit, his house. And then he told Lavan all these things. And Lavan said to him, "You are of my bone and of my flesh." And when Yaakov stayed with him for a month, Lavan said to Yaakov, "Just because you're my relative, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me, what should your wages be?" Well, Lavan had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. And Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance, and Yaakov loved Rachel. So he said, "I will serve you as a hired workman for 7 years in return for the privilege of marrying Rachel, your younger daughter." And Lavan said, "It's better that I give her in marriage to you than give her to another man. Stay and work with me." So Yaakov served Lavan for 7 years for the right to marry Rachel. But they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. And finally, Yaakov said to Lavan, "Give me my wife, for my time of service is completed, so that I may take her to me as my Ishsha," my wife. So Lavan gathered together all the men of the place and prepared a wedding feast with wine. Note, the wedding feast was usually a lavish event lasting 7 days, with an immense variety of food being served along with wine. Continuing. But in the evening he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to Yaakov, and Yaakov went in to consummate the marriage with her. Note, Lavan made sure that Yaakov was thoroughly intoxicated before he switched daughters on him. Continuing. And Lavan gave Zilpah, his shifka, to his daughter Leah as a shifka. But in the morning when Yaakov awoke, it was Leah who was with him. And he said to Lavan, "What is this that you have done to me? Did I not work for you for 7 years for Rachel? Why have you deceived and betrayed me like this?" But Lavan only said, "It's not the tradition here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older. Finish the week of the wedding feast for Leah, and then we will give you Rachel also. And in return, you will work for me for 7 more years." So Yaakov complied and fulfilled Leah's week of celebration, and then Lavan gave him his daughter Rachel as his second wife. And Lavan also gave Bilhah, his shifka, to his daughter Rachel as her shifka. And Yaakov consummated his marriage and lived with Rachel as his wife, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he served with Laban for another 7 years. Now when Yahweh saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb to bear children. But Rachel was barren. Leah conceived and gave birth to a son and named him Reuven, meaning, "Behold, a son." For she said, "Because Yahweh has seen my humiliation and suffering, now my husband will love me." And she conceived again and gave birth to a son, and said, "Because Yahweh heard that I am unloved, he has given to me this son also." And she named him Shimon, meaning hearing. And she conceived yet again, and gave birth to a son, and said, "Now this time my husband will become attached to me as a companion, for I have given him 3 sons. And therefore he was named Lewi, the one we know as Levi. Lewi. And yet again she conceived and gave birth to a 4th son. And she said, "Now I will praise Yahweh." So she named him Yehudah, meaning praise Yahweh. And then, for a time, she stopped bearing children. Now when Rachel saw that she conceived no children for Yaakov, she envied her sister and said to Yaakov, "Give me children or I will die." But Yaakov became furious with Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of Elohim who has denied you children?" And she said, "Here, take my Shivka, Bilhah, and go into her, and when the baby comes, she will deliver it while sitting on my knees, so that by her I may also have children to count as my own." Note, delivering a baby while sitting on the knees of the husband's wife was a ritual symbolizing that the wife was providing the child for her husband through a surrogate mother. Continuing, so she gave him Bilhah, her Shivka, as a secondary wife. Yaakov went into her, and Bilhah conceived and gave birth to a son for Yaakov. And Rachel said, "Elohim has judged and vindicated me, and has heard my plea, and has given me a son through my Shivka." And she named him Dan, meaning a judge. For Rachel, however, it meant Elohim judged and vindicated me. Continuing, and Bilhah, Rachel's Shivka, conceived again and gave birth to a 2nd son for Yaakov. And Rachel said, "With mighty wrestlings in prayers to Elohim, I have struggled with my sister and have prevailed." So she named him Naphtali, meaning my wrestlings. Then, when Leah saw that she had stopped bearing children, she took Zilpah, her Shivka, and gave her to Yaakov as a secondary wife. And Zilpah, Leah's Shivka, gave birth to a son for Yaakov. And Leah said, "How fortunate!" And she named him Gad, meaning good fortune. And Zilpah, Leah's Shivka, gave birth to a 2nd son for Yaakov, and Leah said, "I am happy, for women will call me happy." And she named him Asher, meaning happy. Now at the time of wheat harvest, Reuven, the eldest child, went and found some dudai in the field. Note, dudai are commonly known as mandrakes, also called love apples, because it's a narcotic plant thought by ancient peoples to be an aphrodisiac, or a cure for infertility. Again, Reuven, the eldest child, went and found some dudai in the field and brought them to his mother, Leah. And Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's dudai." But Leah answered, "Is it a small thing that you have taken my husband? Would you take away my son's dudai also?" So Rachel said, "Yaakov will sleep with you tonight in exchange for your son's dudai." And when Yaakov came in from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must sleep with me tonight, for I have in fact hired you with my son's dudai." And he slept with her that night. Now Elohim listened and answered the prayer of Leah, and she conceived and gave birth to a fifth son for Yaakov. And Leah said, "Elohim has given me my reward because I have given my Shifka to my husband." So she named him Yisachar, meaning reward. Yisachar. And Leah conceived again and gave birth to a sixth son for Yaakov. And Leah said, "Elohim has endowed me with a good marriage gift for my husband. Now he will live with me, regarding me with honor as his wife, because I have given birth to 6 sons." So she named him Zevulun, meaning exalted. Afterward she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. Then Elohim remembered the prayers of Rachel, and Elohim thought of her and opened her womb so that she would conceive. And she conceived and gave birth to a son. And she said, "Elohim has taken away my disgrace and humiliation." And she named him Yosef, meaning Yahweh has added. Joseph, properly pronounced Yosef, and said, "May Yahweh add to me another son." Now when Rachel had given birth to Yosef, Yaakov said to Lavan, "Send me away that I may go back to my own place and to my own country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and let me go. For you know the work which I have done for you." But Lavan said to him, "If I have found favor in your sight, stay with me, for I have learned from the omens and divination, and by experience, that Yahweh has baruched me because of you." And he said, "Name your wages, and I will give it to you." So Yaakov answered him, saying, "You know how I've served you, and how your possessions, your cattle, your sheep, and your goats, have fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased and multiplied abundantly. And Yahweh has favored you with Bereshith, blessings, wherever I turned. But now, when will I provide for my own household?" And Lavan asked, "What should I give you?" And Yaakov replied, "You will not give me anything, but if you will do this one thing for me, which I now propose, I will again pasture and keep your flock. Let me pass through your entire flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every dark or black one among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled ones that are among the goats, and those will be my wages. And my integrity, my fairness, and my goodness will answer for me in due time when you come for an accounting concerning my wages. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and dark among the young lambs, if found with me, will be considered stolen." And Lavan said, "Good, let it be done as you say." And on that same day, Lavan secretly removed the male goats that were streaked and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, everyone with white on it, and all the dark ones among the sheep, and put them in the care of his sons. And he put a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Yaakov. And Yaakov was then left in care of the rest of Laban's flock. And Yaakov took branches of fresh poplar and almond and plane trees, and peeled white stripes in them, exposing the white in the branches. Then he set the branches which he had peeled in front of the flocks in the watering troughs, where the flocks came to drink. And they mated and conceived when they came to drink. And the flocks mated and conceived by the branches, and the flocks gave birth to streaked, speckled, and spotted offspring. Note, the success of Yaakov's action was undoubtedly the answer to an unrecorded prayer. Later, in chapter 31, verses 7 through 12, Yaakov gives Elohim the credit for what happened, citing a special dream that he had from Elohim. Continuing. Yaakov separated the lambs, and as he had done with the peeled branches, he made the flocks face toward the streaked, and all the dark or black in the new flock of Laban. And he put his own herds apart by themselves, and did not put them where they could breed with Laban's flock. Furthermore, whenever the stronger animals of the flocks were breeding, Yaakov would place the branches in the sight of the flock in the watering troughs, so that they would mate and conceive among the branches. But when the flock was sickly, he did not put the branches there. So the sicker animals were Laban's, and the stronger animals were Yaakov's. And Yaakov became exceedingly prosperous. He had large flocks of sheep and goats, and female and male servants, and camels, and donkeys. And that concludes our study for this week, my friends. Let's bow our hearts. Dear beloved Abba, Father, we come before you, Abba, to thank you for today's time, being washed by and growing in your word. Father, we pray that you plant seeds in our hearts from our time in your word this day. Seeds that take root, Father, and grow in us so that we can know what it's like to be closer to you. And further, from our love of the things of this world. As always, Abba, we give this day to you, Yeshua, and Ruach HaKodesh, in Yeshua's Kodesh name. Yahweh, Yahweh, our Elohim, Yahweh Echad. Amen. And that concludes it, my friends, for this week. Abba willing, I'll see you once again as we continue here next week. Until then, as always, I hope and I pray that these studies are a major berachah for you and yours. And until next week, Shalom, Chavarim.
Now 2,000 years have gone by, it's another working day. Some would rather let it lie, but the question still remains. You say